Welcome to the Veterinary Rehabilitation Podcast, where we aim to help fellow veterinary rehab therapists increase their knowledge and elevate their practice. I'm Megan Kelly.
And I'm Anae Lloyd. Together, we bring you the latest insights, research, and information in the field of veterinary rehabilitation.
This podcast is brought to you by Onlinepethealth, a leading continuing education membership for veterinary rehabilitation therapists. With Onlinepethealth, you will have access to a wide range of online resources to help you stay up to date with the latest techniques, advances, and trends in the industry.
Our podcast features in-depth conversations with leading experts in veterinary rehabilitation. They share their own experiences and knowledge to help you improve your practice. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out in the field, our goal is to provide you with the tools and the insights you need to succeed.
So join us as we explore the exciting world of veterinary rehabilitation and help you take your practice to the next level. Hey Vet Rehabbers, this week on the Veterinary Rehabilitation Podcast, I'm kicking off 2026 with an absolute gem of a conversation. I'm joined by Claire Pickens. She's a business mentor and author of the book, The Positive Blueprint, Writing Your Business Plan. Claire and I unpack what it really takes to build a thriving vet rehab practice in today's world. We chat about the sneaky mindset blocks that hold so many talented therapists back, and she says simple, practical, totally doable strategies that can help you create a business you're genuinely excited to wake up for. Now, whether you're brand new to practice or you've been at it for years, Claire has this wonderful way of making everything feel clear, grounded, and inspiring. So if you've been stuck, overwhelmed, or just unsure of what your next move should be, this episode is going to give you direction, clarity, and a little boost of confidence to carry you into 2026. If you're looking for some continuing education opportunities, we have 3 free webinars available to you: an evidence-based approach to CCLR rehabilitation with Lilani Alvarez, hydrotherapy for patellar luxations with Ansi van der Walt, and the horse hoof connection with Yogi Sharp. All you need to do is go to onlinepethealth.com/free to sign up. A quick word from our sponsors before we dive into today's topic. At Paw Prosper, we believe true pet well-being demands a 3-pronged approach: prevention, support, and rehabilitation. Our brands are trusted by veterinarians, universities, and rehab facilities alike. So whether you're looking to train, rehabilitate, or help your patients age gracefully, our brands, Walking Pets, Help 'em Up, Respond Animal Therapeutics, Fit Paws, Muffins, Halos, Sleepy Pod, and Canine Carts offer effective, innovative, and proven solutions. You can sign up today to receive a one-time special gift for all the podcast listeners with your next order. You just have to head over to the special link, and it's at pawprosper.com/OPH. Right, over to my chat with Claire. Hey Claire, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
Claire, for the listeners, won't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where this interest of creating business proposals for veterinary professionals came? Because you know as well as I do, business and veterinarians, they're not the two things that gel, right? So we go into it thinking we're just going to be helping animals, and there's this whole business side of veterinary practice or vet rehab practice, and we know so little about it. So I'm excited to chat to you about this topic.
Absolutely. Well, I have been in the veterinary industry since I was very young. Like 12 years old was my first job on a horse farm, helping the large animal veterinarian with collection and insemination of mares. So I've been around the industry forever, worked in every position except for doctor. And I have fallen in love with some of the aspects of the industry that not everybody falls in love with, which is the people, the management of people, the strategy. It's a really interesting business. There's a lot of emotional aspects to veterinary medicine. So as I kind of went through my career, I tried different things. I tried human resources, payables, and lots of central structure and support. And then I became a non-DVM owner myself. So the first plan I wrote was for my own practice. And that was quite a journey to do that before I had business degrees and before I had the formal education and certification. So I do very personally know the struggle and how difficult that is. And then I took those skills after I sold the practice. I took those same skills and helped open over 100 practices across the country. And it's just fascinating. So why do I like doing this? I think that it's really interesting, and I know it's painful for a lot of people, and I know I can make it easier for a lot of people. So that is the main drive behind me wanting to do this professionally.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like when I think about opening up a vet rehab practice, because obviously a lot of our listeners are vet rehab professionals, I get excited. And all I want to do is like get the underwater treadmill and do all the things. And then I think about that business proposal side and I feel nauseous because that's the side of things which I hate doing. It's so important though, right? And I think so many of us because we love the treating of the patients and we love the practical side of things, sometimes we avoid doing all these things that we're supposed to be doing. And if I really think back to when I opened up my practice, when I say I put a business proposal together, it really was like it was like maybe 2 pages of like, all right, like I've got the underwater treadmill. If I just need to see this many patients to pay off the loan, that's
Mm.
literally what it involved, and that was it. So I think a lot of us just go in blind and just hope and think it's going to be okay. Why is it so important if someone is wanting to start a practice, whether it be a veterinary practice or a vet rehab practice, to actually sit down and create a proper business plan?
It forces you to think about all the different angles of the business. And sometimes people want to rush through that, and they maybe don't want to necessarily think about the parts that they're not as comfortable with, or they're not as educated on, or maybe they don't even, which I see often, maybe they don't want to admit that they don't know about that part. And so like when you go through a process of looking at every angle of the business, you become much more educated about your own business even before you start. So I think it's kind of the difference of, we all talk about Dr. Google, but it is kind of that difference between using Dr. Google to find out what's wrong with your pet and speaking to somebody who has years and years of higher education to know what's wrong with your pet. And it's like that's the difference between rushing through a business plan and being methodical and planned, and really diving in and getting to know motivation and tactical strategy. Like it's both things. Like there's a big you discover a lot of whys in the process. Like, why am I doing this? Why is the client gonna like it? Like there's a lot of whys answered throughout the process.
Yeah, and I think it also really sets you up for success because, you start to think about like what your goals are. And,
Mm-hmm.
especially like financial goals and, sort of what do you need in order to be able to keep going. And often, when we start a practice, if you don't have those goals in mind, you don't know whether you're actually doing well or you're growing or where you're going. And you just keep going, and then suddenly you realize it's 5 years down the line, and you're like, where are we going? And it's so important to have those goals because it allows you to be able to say yes or no to certain things because you know what your goals are. And also just gives you so much clarity, right? Clarity on like how you're going to do this, who you need to help you, and then also when to change things if things are not working because you know exactly what the plan is for the next few years. Do you normally advise people when they do a business plan to have sort of like a 1 year projection, a 5 year, 10 year projection? How do you normally advise them to set that out when they're starting from the beginning?
Well, most banks are going to want to see at least a 3, some want to see a 5. So that should be just a normal part of the predicting and forecasting process, is what does your first at least 3 to 5 look like? However, I do advise people look for the exit before you even enter, and know not just how you're going to get into this business, but start to make some predictions for when you're going to get out of the business, and maybe the couple of different exit routes that might be, whether that's selling to another private practitioner. Maybe you own the real estate, maybe you don't, maybe it's not even selling within your industries, but you have to know what those exit points are, because if you don't start with the end in mind, you could find yourself in a position 10 years in of going, well, then now what? Like what what do I do now? So I think it's really important to do that. And I think of it like you should pick this back up at year 5, whatever you wrote down. And it's kind of like a dear diary, like, dear diary, this is what I said I was going to do. And how many of these things did I actually do? And maybe it's like, oh, wow, okay, I should do that. Maybe I didn't do that yet, but I should do that. And you kind of rewrite the plan for the next 5 years. You can write a plan while you're in business too. It should be not just for new businesses, but also for existing businesnesses.
Yeah, I love that. Plan with an exit in mind, because let's be real, most of us, when we start a practice, we're not thinking about how we can sell it, but life happens and something might happen in your life that maybe your husband gets transferred somewhere to another country and you have to. And it's important to be prepared for that. So know how you can exactly exit.
Mhm.
What would a business plan look like? Can you just like give us a breakdown of like what's included in there, and how do you set it up? Do you put it into like a Word document, or like what is your advice around that?
Yeah, I think I recommend having 2 versions that you're building simultaneously. So one version is like a complete brain dump that goes through all the categories and has every single little thought about it. It really is kind of like a diary of how you're feeling about it and just randomness. And then the actual business plan is kind of a refined version of that, where you think about what would somebody else want to hear about this plan. And that was the mistake I made with my very first plan, is that I turned into the bank my complete brain dump, which had way too much information in it. And they kind of were like, oh goodness, is there a shorter version of this that maybe we could read? But I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. But like, it's basically, you start with a high level summary. It's your elevator pitch of your business. That's what draws the reader in. And then you go systematically through, where is it going to be? Who are my customers in that area? How many of them are there in that area? I mean, could I possibly be my customer? You talk about your competition, and then you kind of move from, after you talk about your competition, you start creating that value proposition of your own and move into your products and services, how you're going to market those products and services, the team that supports those products and services, and then like operationally, how you're going to execute it, and like what potential barriers could be there, or things you need, like compliance, licenses, things like that, to execute on these things. And then last is the financial projections. And if anybody working with me knows, I don't like to touch that until we're at least halfway through, because numbers cloud the entire process. If you get stuck in money first, then all you're focusing on is that loan, or paying off a loan, or how much money you're going to make. And that is not what keeps entrepreneurs successful. The heart of an entrepreneur does it for different reasons than money. And if you're not tied to that, like really strongly tied to that, then you may not even enjoy this business when you open it. So numbers come last in my mind.
And obviously, those numbers is what the bank's looking at, right? So,
Yes.
I mean, when we're looking at creating this business proposal, we're looking at it for us to make sure that we've covered everything, and we make sure that this is actually a business that can thrive. Because, maybe we're doing the business proposal, and then somewhere as we're doing it and we're going through it, we realize there's a massive roadblock here. Something is going to prevent this business from succeeding. So that's why we're doing it. We're doing it so we can find out before we start it if there's going to be a major problem that's going to stop us from being successful. But also, we do it to be able to get investors. Maybe someone wants to invest in the business. Maybe you need to get a loan from the bank. And I think that's probably the biggest reason that people think that they're creating it. They create this business plan just to they're thinking, I need this to get the loan, but there are so many other reasons. For the bank though, right, it's those financial projections that they really look at. So what are things that you've experienced and you've been working with people that they've done wrong in when creating this business plan that is not really been to their advantage when trying to get a loan?
Yeah, well, here's a dirty little secret that a lot of people don't think about, or maybe even know. The bank already knows your stats. The bank already has a bunch of data crunching financial people that already know, based on your zip code, the probability of success of your business. Everything you turn into them is just a validation that you also know it. So I think when people turn it in, they may think it's like a pass or fail test. It's not a pass or fail test because veterinary medicine is really secure and stable and very low risk for banks. What it is an understanding that we both agree what the probability of like regular performance or like super success is. And they know that veterinarians are going to pay back their loans. So I think that's something to understand first is that this is not a pass or fail test. It is a partnership. Banks are very pro veterinary and they're also willing to help in a lot of ways. So I do see a lot of people getting intimidated when maybe it's not even necessary to get intimidated by the financial portion. It's just a matter of numbers. But on the matter of numbers, it is way too easy to put them on a sheet and, like, oh, well, I want this building. Here's the biggest mistake I see. I want this fancy building. And I know that it's not the best financial choice, but it's super pretty. I'm just going to make my financials work. And like, that's really easy to do in Excel, right? So if I didn't choose this fancy building, I would need to see 12 patients per day. But with this fancy building, I need to see 18 patients per day. No big deal. I'll just pump it up to that. It is a big deal because when you get in the real world and you're seeing patients, that might not work. Like that might not functionally work. And you might have set yourself up for a really difficult financial time by pumping up the numbers. So that's why I like to get to numbers last, because it's important that the business fits the life of the person opening it, not the other way around. And the whole business should not be shaped around repaying that loan. The business should be shaped around how you want to practice and the vacations you want to take and when you want to go home. And that's what the business should be shaped around. How you get in, how you practice, how you get out. The loan is a secondary thought.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, we all want that pretty practice, don't we? We want all the bells and whistles. But to be honest, I think, in the vet rehab space, I think a lot of us actually start as mobile. So we actually start with less and then eventually we increase and then we eventually have to make that decision to go brick and mortar. So I think for a lot of the vet rehab therapists, that's when they're actually, okay, now I need to create this business plan because I either have to get more equipment or an underwater treadmill or something like that. So I think they're used to actually working with less and then just adding in. And hopefully, a lot of them have got some business experience from having that mobile practice and having to, they're not just starting from very, very scratch. So yeah. You mentioned that one of the things you must add into your business plan is a value proposition. Explain a
Yes.
little bit more about that and how important it is.
Yeah, value proposition is interesting because I think it gets misinterpreted a lot for creating something that's brand new or extremely unique, and it's not that. So when I think of value proposition, the comparable industries I like to use are restaurants. If you look at restaurants, largely the menus are the same, right? Nobody has invented the sandwich. The sandwich exists, but their value proposition might be in how they serve the sandwich. It might be in the options you have for that sandwich. And it's absolutely no different for other industries. So you might be offering, there might be another rehab center within 5 miles of you or 10 miles of you, which the bank will see as competition. Your value proposition is how you serve the service. It's not whether both of you have a water treadmill. It's not whether both of you offer packages or memberships. It's in the experience that's created for the client from the start to the end and the relationship that's built with the client. And so that's where I think sometimes people get stuck because they're like, well, I don't have anything new to add to the industry. Then that's not what you're doing. The value proposition is in the how, not in the what. And I think, sometimes people don't realize how much they've already probably invented in just how they interact with people. And they just need to write that down. Like, what's your secret sauce for people coming back to you? Why do they love working with you? That's in veterinary medicine. That's the leading value proposition is relationships.
Yeah, I mean, so in a professional world where we all do the same thing, which we do,
Yeah.
right? It's like what stands you apart from
Hmm.
the person down the road. And like you say, it's not because they've got a laser and you don't, or you've got something and they don't. It's what makes you the person that those people want to come back to see. So yeah, that's a great way of explaining it. I like the sandwich analogy. Um, it's the same if you think about it in veterinary practice. We're all spaying dogs, we're all treating, we're all doing vaccinations. It's the relationships that we build. So, I mean, just listening to this now, I mean, customer experience is
Hmm.
very important, and that's something that we should be putting in our business plans. Like, how do we plan to make that client's experience so amazing that they just want to keep coming back to us?
Yeah, and I what I encourage people do, especially in operations, that when you're talking about the product and service or the operations of the business, actually draw it out. Like get a piece of paper and draw every single step that the client has to go through before and after they interact with you. And it's I will tell you from leading over 100 practices personally, the client is not going to remember that they got a text reminder before or after. They're not going to remember the technology that you used. What they will remember is that it was easy or difficult. And then they'll remember that interaction with you. So you're not this is a big mistake I see. I'm going to use technology or AI to make my business more advanced than the business up the street. That's not really a value proposition. The value is interacting with my business is easier and less stressful for the client, and technology might be the method to do that. But it's not going to be the thing they remember about your business. The thing they're going to remember about your business is how their pet felt walking in and out and how they felt walking in and out. So I think, when people are doing this design process, anywhere they can make it less painful for themselves or for the client, that's the value. That's the value that you're creating now in your business. And you might even save money in the process of doing that because you might not need as many people sitting at the front desk or, you know, writing on papers and records and such.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, in a world now where everything is virtually automated and easy online, filling in forms and stuff, we have to sort of come to the party, right? In the veterinary field. And I think we're a bit behind. I
Mhm.
think the veterinary profession, you know, I mean, there's still practices, right, that don't have online note taking or use AI or I think we tend to want to not use that. It scares us.
Mhm.
But any place where we can reduce friction and make things simple and easy for people, I think people have become nowadays, if I think about just myself, right? I get frustrated if I have to wait for something, or you go onto a website and then you want to do something, you want to book an appointment, and then you fill out all this information, and then it says, leave your email address and we'll
Mm.
contact you. And then I'm like, what? I just filled out all that information and I just wanted to click the button and book an appointment, and now I have to wait for you to phone me back. Those are the kind of things, really, right?
Yeah.
You just want instant gratification because that's what we used to. Everything, all these other companies like Amazon and, they're making it super easy for us to buy things and get it delivered straight to our door. And so they're expecting the same thing. And yeah, I think there's a massive opportunity in the veterinary profession for veterinary practices, whether you rehab or traditional GP or specialist or whatever, to raise your game in those kind of things, the customer experience and reducing friction. There's a lot
Mhm.
for us to learn.
Well, there is, and I think when people go into business, a lot of times I see people start their plan thinking about what they want in the business. Like maybe they worked for somebody that didn't have something they wanted, and they're like, well, I'm going to open my own because now I can have that thing, and that's because I want it. That's actually exact opposite way that you should think about opening a business. Your business success lives and dies on what your customer wants. So you might not even want to use AI scribing, but your customer might want certain reports, or your customer might want a certain kind of visit, or maybe they're really busy working professionals and they need to get out of there quicker. Like, so you might be in a position to say, well, maybe it might not be exactly what I want, but this means the customer will want it more. Because I think we think of the bank being the investor in the business. The bank is just fronting the money. Your clients are the investors in your business. Your client, every single time they come in and exchange money for time and services, they're investing in your business. So like that's if you think about it that way, then every day, every week, every month, every quarter becomes a new chance to impress your investor. Because you're never, what are the odds you're going to talk to the bank again after you get that loan? Unless something weird happens, you're probably not going to. So, but you're talking to your primary investor all the time. Like that's, so if people reshape how they think, the approach of who's the investor, sometimes it changes that like resistance to change of like, oh wait, I'm not changing for the bank or for me, I'm changing for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you think about, I mean, a big company that's got loads of investors, you want to keep your investors happy, right? If I think back to my practice, just as you're talking now, I can remember in the early days, I was just so wanting to impress my clients, and I bent over backwards for them, And then the bigger we got, the more people were involved, the harder it became. And at one stage, and thank goodness I corrected it, so I did notice this is happening, we became so internally focused on us and how it impacted us, and not what was better for the clients, because we wanted things to be smoother at the practice. And we started to make changes that were not in the client's best interest, in our best interest. And that tends to come from the team who just keeps complaining about things, and you just want to try and improve the culture and everything in the practice. You want to just make them all happy. But there's this fine line between, making things right for the team and actually not for the clients. And I can remember a few clients, and this is actually when I realized, oh my gosh, this is what we're doing. Was a few clients that said to me, I really miss like the old days when, you used to bring tea and a little cookie, and, sometimes now you're too busy to do that. And, there were all these little things that they were saying. And I thought, oh my gosh, like what's happened? And then I just had this wish to go back to those times when, it was simple and easy, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go back. You don't have to go back in your business. You just have to reframe how you think of things, and you just have to, the team has to be on board that, who's the most important person here, right? They're paying your salary. If we don't have clients, we don't have happy clients, we don't have a practice. So it's such a easy thing to slip into, where you just become so centered and focused on the practice and the team and yourself and what's better for you. Forget about those important people called clients.
That's why I think that business planning is not just for new businesses. I think that everybody gets to that stage eventually where you essentially have built yourself your own job, and you start to feel like it's a job and not like your own business. It's just kind of here, I keep showing up every day. I keep the employees happy. I keep the clients happy. And entrepreneurs, put themselves last a lot in that equation. So I think that's why I think it's a good idea to like maybe pull out that original plan and read through it to get to know your old self again and be like, that's why I was doing this. So now I need to go through this exercise with my team, because my team might not really understand the original motivation, or maybe like to them it's a job. And I think that's the other big mistake entrepreneurs make, is they think everybody else is going to have the same passion and vision for what they've built, when the reality is largely employees see it as a job. And so like it's your job to impart the vision and the passion and help them own a piece of it. So that might mean that during the re-business planning process, they get to help design one of those sections. And instead, like, let's think about our marketing again, and who wants to own a little piece of this so that they have a tie to it. Otherwise, it's possible to buy yourself a really expensive hard job in opening your own business. So I think at least every 3 to 5 years, you should pull this thing back out again, refigure it out. Things change.
And of course, if you're the person that's listening right now and you never created a plan at all, you're just going along and just things are working, or maybe things are not working. Either way,
Yeah.
maybe you can now, it's not too late. You can
Yep.
sit and make this business plan. So, Claire, you have an 8-step process to create a
Yes.
business. Run through that quickly with us and then tell us about your book because you've actually written a book. So, guys, this is all available, right? I
Mhm.
know that you can work with Claire, so she can help you with this, but you can also buy her book and you will be able to get this whole plan and sit down and actually create this business plan that you didn't do.
Yeah, yeah, you should. Yeah, it's never too late. You can start anytime. Even if you're an employee in an organization, you're trying to design a department, you can write a business plan for that. So the book is called Positive Blueprint. I have a version that is specific for vet and pet services. And then I have another book that's called Small Business Dreams that's for any industry. So it could be, handyman or hairdressers or whoever. But the 8 steps, the 8 categories are based off of what banks like to see, and also just to have a really well-rounded, categorized look at your business. So you don't have to redesign the whole thing. Maybe you go back to one section. So that's the intent of these 8 categories, is that it's not all lumped together in one big, mush pile. So it's the executive summary, company description, market analysis, your organization and management, products and services, sales and marketing, operations, and finances. And as you progressively go through this, each section builds off of the last one and gets just a little deeper into the content. Once you get past products and services, you should be able to start shaping where your revenue is coming from. And that's why I super highly suggest don't start with where your revenue comes from first. Allow yourself to think of the core of your business first and your value first, and then how much of each thing will contribute to the revenue. Because like you said, if you start with how much it takes to pay off the water treadmill, that's what you'll think about the whole time.
Nice. And so your book, does it help you go through the step by step? So is it like a practical guide? Like if you buy the book, you go through it, you'll be able to finish the business plan.
Yeah, yeah. The only section that might get a little difficult based on a book is the financials. And
Okay.
that's let me clear my throat a little bit. All right. And that's just because I can't put a spreadsheet inside of a book. So
Yeah.
it's going to walk people through the essentials of what needs to be there, but if you don't know how to build some of that stuff, you might have to work with a professional to build that particular part. But otherwise, the other areas, there's reflection questions that kind of get to the why behind each of the areas, and then some technical details like technical, some definitions. Because if you don't have a business background, some of the terminology in business planning can be a little tough to digest. So, so I definitely humanize it a lot in the process.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of us, that terminology is not things we hear all the time, and that's where the overwhelm comes, especially when you're
Mhm.
going to a bank and you're speaking to them. So it's really nice to actually get yourself, educated and just get prepared so that you know exactly. So if one of those questions comes your way when you have the appointment with your banker to get your loan, you're a little bit in the know and not sort of seeming like you don't know anything about business.
Yeah, and the bank doesn't really expect you to speak in business terms. They just expect you to know your business. So when you're practicing the conversations, you can just that's part of my process as well, is once you get through it, you should be able to explain your business back to me. And it doesn't need to sound like an investor pitch deck. It just needs to sound like you understand the different areas that will make your business successful. And that's really all they want to know, is that you did a little bit of math and that you kind of intimately understand your business and didn't just, tell ChatGPT, build me a business plan, which sometimes people do, and that doesn't work out very well. But because you just won't really know, it's too vague. Like there needs to be personalization to a plan, any kind of plan.
Have any advice for somebody, and obviously buying your book is the first piece of advice, but just for someone who's wanting to start their practice now and they're just don't know where to start, and they potentially might need to get a loan. They're actually not sure what they're wanting to build. And so they're going to create this business plan to actually get that clarity and know exactly, okay, this is actually what I want. Because I think sometimes that is also the case, is that you want to build a business, but you don't know how you can do it or what you can do. And sometimes actually just sitting down and working out a business plan gives you the direction where you want to go. So any advice for that person?
Yeah, I would subscribe to every single resource that is free out there. There are lots of veterinary business journals and magazines. Because like I said, I didn't have any business training even when I wrote my first plan, but I did commit to reading at least one article per day, not on the topics that I like, because I like the sciencey side too. So I always gravitate towards reading like the cool thing or the new drug. But I challenged myself to leadership or economics or transaction values or some sort of industry report. Like I made myself do that every day. So that's the first thing I would recommend is read the things you've been avoiding. And that helps a lot. The second thing I would do is to get out of the veterinary industry and read about other businesses and how they go through hard times. So as an example, my practice was unfortunately open during the big recession. It opened not long before that. So I followed Kohl's. Kohl's department stores had a really unique and different approach to customer acquisition and retention during that. The med spa industry is actually a really good industry to learn from when it comes to veterinary medicine because it's discretionary money. And how do you keep clients when it's discretionary money that they don't have to spend and they want to spend? So I think following other industries teaches people a lot about what you can get a little creative, because if you get trapped in vet med, sometimes the creativity, like you said, we fall behind a lot. So get out and read other things. And I think shopping your service too and reframing how you think about competition, because that is another thing I see pretty commonly is the phrase "I'm going to do it better than whoever's up the street" is a very dangerous phrase to say. Clients are only attracted to an industry if they generally like the whole industry. So it's actually a much more productive activity to point out all of the positive things that the people in your area do, because the better everybody is at providing the service, the more clients are attracted to the service in general. So you see that in like the food industry does that really well. They want you attracted to whatever it is, not necessarily to put down their competition, but more to like make you want a hamburger. Like you really want a hamburger. And we hope we're the ones that you choose to get that. So I think veterinary medicine can learn a lot from some of
Yeah.
these strategies and techniques where we reshape and reframe how we see the industry and where we get our learning from, right? Get outside of vet med to learn a little.
Yeah, and there's a vet practice, or a few now. I remember it was a few years ago, and I'm racking my brain, and you might actually know who they are. It's like a corporate now, so it's a group of them, and they actually modeled their practices off like spas. And do you know which one I'm talking about?
Now, a few of them have kind of done that with the Zen experience,
Yeah.
the walk, the no phones at the front desk, get really quiet. Yeah.
Yeah, and they had they started in New York. I remember the first one, and like they showed these pictures and I was like, oh my gosh, that does not look like a vet practice. It looks like everything that a vet practice isn't, you know?
Mhm.
But it was such a hit and the people came in there, it was calm, and they had one of the things is they had no appointments. You didn't have to make an appointment. You just pitch and you get a consult. And then they also made this thing where they said you wouldn't have to wait a certain amount of time. And I was like, how are these people doing this? You know, how? Because I mean, I've worked in GP vet practices, when we have to book appointments and
Hmm.
we are behind, and now they're just saying, just come down whenever you want. That's it. So like
Hmm.
they were making all these promises and they must have delivered because they're expanding and they're getting bigger. And that's their value proposition, right? You don't
Hmm.
have to make an appointment, just come whenever you want, which for some people is great, for other people it isn't. So I think you had the choice. You could make an appointment if you wanted to, and then you could also just pop in, if you want, if you 15-minute consult or whatever. So how they did that, I have no idea, logistically. But then also just, yeah, the whole experience is obviously so different. So yeah, there's so many different ways in which we can stand out. And one of the things you said, and I had an immediate thought as you said it, you said, we're going to just be better than the people down the road. And, for me, it's like, you should be asking yourself, how can we be different?
Yeah.
How can we do things differently? Because if you're the same, like just doing exactly the same and just trying to be better, it's going to be this constant battle. But if you just set yourself apart and just be different, do something differently, then that's what you'll be known for, right? There's,
Hmm.
there's an incredible book called Talk Triggers. I don't know if you've read it before.
Mm-mm.
You'd love it. You must read it. Yeah, so have a Google there, called Talk Triggers, and it's basically, and they actually give some like pet company examples in there too. But it's basically how you can create something that you do in every single day. So it has to
Mm-hmm.
be something, it's not something that you just do once off. It's an everyday thing that is so different that people just cannot stop themselves from telling other people about it.
Yep.
And so, like here as an example, is somebody had this restaurant actually, and it was in this little bar, and they didn't advertise it. And it's usually not something you advertise. So you don't go like put out in social media, this is what we do. You don't. You keep very quiet about it. You get the people that come there to tell other people about it because they can't.
Hmm.
It's so interesting and so weird and so different that people have to say it. And so there's this bar, and the only way you can get into this restaurant is through a telephone booth. And so
Yeah.
people in the bar go, and it's the old like tiki box. So people go in and it's inside, you open the little door and now other people are watching, right? And they pick up the phone and you have to say some code or something. And then a door opens where the tea box is and you go in and the door closes. And then everyone is like, what is going on here, right? And it's like no one speaks about it and no one publicizes it. But I think if you had to ask, they'll explain, oh, there's a restaurant there and you have to know the password. And then
Mhm.
everyone wants to know the password. And it's this, they fully booked basically this restaurant from creating something that is such a huge talk trigger that people will go to a dinner or go somewhere and they'll talk about it. So these are the things we got to think about. What can we do in our practices that will generate other people to talk about us all the time, right? So yeah, it's an interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Focus on the positive things, right?
And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
an experience. It's those talk triggers are all experiences. Something that happens in the veterinary industry in this practice that is out of the norm. That
Hmm.
they, it's the unexpected. Something is like because that's when people go for a dinner or to a party. They'll go, "You're never going to believe this. I went to this vet practice and this happened." But they're not
Yeah.
going to do that if you're just doing the same as everyone else, right? Because that's what they expect.
That's what they expect. Yeah. In my own practice, my staff had a fantastic time designing puppy practice visits. Like it was just, they just would come in and we would make the whole experience. The exam room was like a treat factory and they just bounced around and like any dog that went through that absolutely loved coming back. And the owner loved coming. Even if it was a sick patient visit, the dog was still like pulling to get into the practice. And the staff had a really good time around that. And it was something very positive for them to create for the client. And they just had a blast doing it. So I think little things like that can help. And I'm glad you brought up how it's easy to get stuck in like the downer side of the industry. And I think we're there right now with a lot of people saying no to things and invoices maybe not being where they should be. However, it's still true across many geographies, the whole country, that only about 50% of the people even bring their animal in at all. And I think we get trapped in complaining about the 50% that do bring them in when we should be like, I'm glad we actually got to see this 50% because there's a whole nother half of pets that don't go to the doctor at all. So just even if they're cranky when they show up, it's still a benefit that they showed up. And even if they only listen to 10% of what you say, it's better than nothing. It's better than zero. So it's just reframing everything to be a little bit more on the positive side of impact. And I think during planning processes, people get down to that to say, well, I just want to practice in a way that feels good to me. And maybe they don't want to open 25 locations. Like, that's a question you have to ask yourself. Like, do you want a boutique? Because if you want a boutique practice, that's fine. Just do one. And if you don't want to manage 20 people, like, that's okay too. Like, you should talk about that during planning. I only want a team that's about, max 15 people. Well, then plan your business that way. And that's fine. You don't need to manage 100 people to be successful. You can manage 10 and be successful. So I think those are good personal questions for people to ask is, why they're doing this.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes I think we think that we studied veterinary, so we work for somebody, then we must open up our own practice, then we must open up multiple practices. And you just think that's the trajectory because you've worked for other people who've done that, or you see other people or colleagues that you studied with are doing that. And, I remember when I opened up my vet rehab practice, I just thought that's what I thought, that's the path. And then I realized that that's not how I wanted it to be. And I have this conversation many times with vet rehab therapists so one of my podcasts is Behind the Vet Rehab Practice. And we chat about, where they are and how they got there and, what their next steps are. And so many of them say, well, I guess this is what I'm going to do. And then I always say to them, you don't have to do that. Like, it's okay. Like, just like if you're happy in how you are, that's also okay. So, like, I think that business planning really just helps you to actually dive into that part of business where you actually try and learn actually what you actually want. And I think you might start off with that big plan. And it's also okay when you do your 3 or 5 year revisit and you have a look and then you say, hey, no, I'm going to change this. I actually love what I do. And I can't see myself having multiple practices or franchises or whatever. So I'm going to change this. And that's the other thing is, yeah, just because you create something, you don't have to follow through with that. You can change it whenever you want. You own that business. But the thing is, you've got to just be aware. You've got to be thinking and you've got to be prepared and know if you want to change it, how you're going to change it, and then have a plan going forward. So,
Yeah, it happened to me also. So when I opened the practice, I of course had these big aspirations of buy another one and do another one and open another one. I did not know the housing crisis was going to happen. I wrote the plan, would have been written in 2003. The building was fully built and opened in 2005, and then the housing crisis happened in 2008. I did not have the economic foresight in 2003 to predict a housing crisis and what that would do to the whole world. So I had to change things. And then just a couple years after that, even though the practice recovered, there were some personal changes in life where the plan to open another one and buy another, like that all completely changed. The landscape completely adjusted. Things with my children were at a particular place at that time. And so I think it's important to be open to that and also not listen to the pressures from other people in that, because I don't know why everybody thinks it's so natural, this expansion and scalability thing, but it's actually not natural to most people. And it just creates a tremendous amount of stress if it's not something that you want. So, and it doesn't necessarily mean your business is worth more. It could mean that your business has more debt. So depending on what the life cycle looks like. So that's why I think, the planning process helps people slow down. It's like slow down before you speed up and just think for a second and really, and here's the, we're very often as a humankind very bad at this, asking for what you want and designing what you want, not what you think everybody else thinks you should have and whatever you think will impress the bank. But should be a very selfish process. This should be about what you want. It's your practice, and it should fit your life really well. But boy, are we bad at that. That's probably one of the hardest parts for people is, will this plan impress other people? And the answer is doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it impresses other people. It should impress you because you're the one that's living with it.
Love that. Claire, it's been so awesome chatting to you about this. If people would like to get hold of you, where is the best place for them to do that? And where can they get your book? Is it on Amazon?
It is on Amazon. So yeah, Positive Blueprint is on Amazon. If you type in my name, Claire Pickens, you're going to see a lot of unicorn stories too. So don't be distracted by that. Buy those too if you want. But Positive Blueprint is on there, and so is Small Business Dreams. And then my website, smallbusiness-dreams.com. I've got all sort of free resources on there. People can do questionnaires without even needing to interact with me. There's samples, entrepreneurial self-care guides, things like that. And then you can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever makes you happy. So my website's probably the easiest way to get in contact with me, though.
Awesome. Okay, thanks so much for your time. It's been great chatting with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice to meet you.
Bye. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I load a new podcast. I'm here every week talking to vet rehab therapists from all over the world about all things vet rehab. A big thanks to our sponsor, Paul Prosper. Their sponsorship allows us to be able to give this podcast to you for free, so please go and check them out, paulprosper.com. Don't forget to bookmark the next Vet Rehab Summit. It's on Saturday, the 31st of October, 2026. Come and be a part of the world's largest online veterinary rehabilitation conference created specifically for you, the vet rehabber community. Online Pet Health members get VIP complimentary access to the Vet Rehab Summit. For more information about continuing education for vet rehabbers, you can go to onlinepethealth.com. And if you want access to our free membership, we update the webinars in this area every 3 months. You can sign up at onlinepethealth.com/free.